Hey everyone, welcome to this series. My name is Luis. I'm going to walk you through on how I built an LLM powered system that I use to run my content publishing system. So this is the first video in that series, and we're going to just walk through what it is that I built and what's going to be coming up in this next series of videos. So first things first, right? What are we going to go talk to? So at the intro, we're going to talk about what hasn't been a problem, what was the problem that made me want to build this whole thing here, the solution that I came up with, how I organized myself to build this and have it run. And then I'll get into the requirements and non-functional requirements of this whole system. So to begin with, like what wasn't the problem? As you can see, I've got these cards here. Generating content, I've got two projects that I am sharing my personal experience with and my professional experience on two different sites, one as a trader and one as a solutions architect, and just general professional. And because of that, no, I don't need help actually coming up with the ideas or anything like that. Whenever I get an idea, I just jot it down on one of these note cards. It's part of my life, so it's easy for me to just talk about what it is that I need to talk about. So with all this AI stuff going on, changing the world and everything, the big thing is you see a lot of AI slop. I don't have to worry about that. I don't need AI to generate my content. It can't generate my content because I'm talking about my life. So it doesn't know my life. So it can't do that for me. But it can do the next thing for me, which is the problem that I was having as I was building and generating all this content for myself and building these videos, writing blog posts or whatnot. It was the distribution of it all. That was really the grind for me as in this whole process. And for those of you that are out there making content and trying to get it out there, the big problems that I had were, okay, after I record all this, I've got to edit it. I do very light editing. Whatever mistakes I make, I just kind of go with it and just kind of it's so the editing is even a light lift, but then it's the uploading. So I've got my own sites and these all go onto YouTube, and that's where they get hosted from onto my websites. And the process of just uploading the content up to YouTube, generating the descriptions, generating the show notes, putting it then on multiple sites, that turned into just an ordeal. I have very fast internet, but that doesn't really matter. I mean, the upload speeds are what they are, and it's fairly small for, putting up a video, and I've tried to put the best quality that I can. So those were the problems I was having, is just the logistics of actually getting the content out there, putting out the show notes, putting on the YouTube descriptions, putting then a associated blog post. That's what I needed help with. Add to that is that, as you can see, I'm not going to be changing my clothes throughout most of this series. That's because I batch record. So I do a whole bunch of videos all at once. I've got all this all laid out. I mean, I've got content upon content here that I need to catch up on, and I'm going to record through this all. And this is not just our series that I'm doing here. So that aggravates the problem, because now I've got multiple files that I've got to upload into YouTube, into my websites. So how did I break this down? So thankfully, one of my skill set is I'm a solution architect. So I build things in AWS. I understand AWS, project manager by trade. This was just another one of my projects. I decided, okay, well, what is it that I actually need to do here? Came up with, I really want something that's AI first, meaning that AI, after I submit and create all this, it can take care of it of itself, and then I can come in and revise whatever it generates, because AI still generates a lot of garbage. So I need to make sure that whatever it creates is reflective of me. But the big crux still was, I wanted it AI first. I wanted it as automated as I possibly could have it, without it ever pushing anything out without my approval. A workflow for that is came up with the proof of concept, focused really on just this publishing element of it, created a design on paper. Everything I do then gets converted over to Lucidchart, because I'm a very visual person. And I architected it. I said, okay, well, this is what I want this to do, and this is what I want to build. With that, I started organizing myself, understanding, what my workflows were, what the different resources I needed to get this deployed. And that's what we're going to turn to right now. I'm going to go to the computer and kind of walk you through what my architecture is that I'm going to talk about, and how I built in the next several videos on this in this series. Let's head on over to the computer. Okay, so here we are. Everything that I do, I always visualize. Design systems, I build systems, I interact with systems for my entire career. So when I can visually see a system, then I can build it, right? And so you'll see a lot of images as I kind of describe this whole workflow here. But this is the general idea that I came up with. I said, okay, here on the left is the content that I was just talking about. I generate content, I either be that a video or I have transcript. All this is happening straight into Riverside. I'll get into more my resources here in a minute, but that I generate some type of content and I want to place that content and store it in some type of storage solution. This is all AWS based. That's Amazon Web Services. So I save all this to an S3 bucket. And the general idea is that there's going to be a changes in state from what the status of that uh, of those files are, of what's happening. So I decided on an event-driven architecture. That's really what I want. Is yes, it's automated, but I want it to happen because something else happened, not because of a request or anything like that. All that's going to be tracked through DynamoDB for just a NoSQL database, kind of keep track of the different states that we're going through with all these different files, because I've got to upload them, I've got to edit them, I've got to then have content generated on it, and ultimately I've got to publish it. All those actions then are going to be driven by Lambda functions. So something changes in DynamoDB, I want that to create an event to an event bridge, which then triggers a Lambda, which then either calls out to an LLM to do what it needs to do, or if it's publishing, then it's going to send it out to make.com, which is going to take care of my OAuth kind of workflow, send things out to YouTube, and then send things out to Buffer so they can be published on my LinkedIn. And then all this is going to be running with a Ghost front end. So that Lambda function also needs to take all that stuff that I just mentioned and send it over to Ghost as a ready-made, everything kind of built out in the way I want it. So all I have to do is just do the final approval. Several stages through here. Yes, it's event driven, but some of those events are driven by me, meaning the revising the workflow or revising the outputs of the Lambda, revising the outputs of the LLM, and approving. I want to make sure that whatever makes it out and through this system is reflective of my quality standards. So ultimately, that's the big general idea of what I'm trying to do. So I'll have a much more detailed architecture diagram that I'll share with you all in my next video. But this is what started this whole concept here. Now, for as far as how is everything going to be stored, GitHub is going to be where I'm going to keep all my files and repositories so that they get pushed over to AWS. For Gen AI, I'm using Nova. I went through several different iterations, but at the time of this recording, I had gone through Claude, I had gone through OpenAI, found that Nova, which is a AWS LLM, worked more than well enough for me, fairly inexpensive compared to all those other ones. It's not generating content. It's just taking the transcripts that I provided and summarizing. So it doesn't have to come up with anything new. It just has to reformat stuff, if anything. So, but for Gen AI to build this, I've used ChatGPT, I've used Claude, and I've used Amazon Q. And how those all played in, we'll get into it as the series evolves. Now, for organization and documentation, let's go over and see how I did that. Okay, so how I organize myself to keep everything documented properly. I use Obsidian, which is a note-taking application. I love this thing for as far as kind of just keeping myself organized. But we'll be going through a lot of this. Here you can see a lot of my documentation. I've architecture overview, what my architecture is, what my patterns are, the layer definitions. Everything is organized. If you organize yourself, then all this stuff is, no matter how complicated, doesn't necessarily make it easy, but it definitely makes it significantly less difficult. So we'll be going a lot through Obsidian, going into Lucidchart over the course of this series, just seeing how I've kind of organized myself, and then going into GitHub and going into AWS to see how that all kind of comes together. So big things here then is what are the requirements for this whole thing? So I've kind of laid out what my different requirements are for this so that I know what target that I'm supposed to hit. I came up with my functional and non-functional requirements. Functional requirements are those things that the application needs to do in order to be successful. And the non-functional requirements are how well does it have to do it in order to succeed. I've got 15. I'm not going to go into detail into each one of these. This is more just kind of seeing what it is that how I built this thing. This is multi-environment. I need to have it published to 2 different sites. That's my independent quant, which is where I'm building my algorithmic trade desk. And the other one is Luis said, which is me. It's my experience, my life experiences, my professional experience. That's where everything is going. I want the same architecture to publish to both sites. I only need to maintain one repository and that's it. I wanted content ingestion to be automatic from the moment I upload something, a research agent, economy agent. So I divided my workflows up into different agents. At the time of this recording, not everything is agentic. It does use LLMs to do a lot of the work. The next phase of this is going to make each one of these an actual agentic solution. I divided that all up, said, okay, my publishing agent, which is going to be a lot of the focus in this series, a newsletter agent, content lifecycle tracking. I want to make sure that I could know what each phase of the content is as it's going through its life cycle. I want to be able to approve everything. Cognito authentication this is a UI that I built so that I can go in and maintain all the kind of that metadata for this. I want Ghost Publishing so that it publishes to my actual website. Canva integration, this one is going to be for my next phase, which is generating the thumbnails for everything. So I'm not really going to get into that in this series. Secrets management, the application needs to maintain all its secrets. Going to be using Secrets Manager in AWS to do that. I'm going to organize S3 in a very logical method, want to use a UI using Amplify, and I want deployment to be fairly easy. So I have shell scripts. So those are the requirements. So for functional requirements, I want to minimize costs as much as possible. I want it to be highly modular so that I can not break the whole system by just changing one aspect of it. And we'll see how I do that by using stacks and the way I organize the overall flow of the architecture so that I can update any component of it without having drastic effects on the overall design. Environment isolation, kind of same idea, but now this is more for making sure that each site is independent from one another, so they're not using the same resources. Security, I want to make sure that the entire application is secure, that it's scalable. Even though this is an operation of one, my ambition for the independent quant is for it to be the leader in quantitative community and education. So that's going to scale to hopefully a great degree. So this needs to scale with that. Maintainability, I wanted to be able to be easy to maintain from one repository, be able to use constructs, config files, make it as easy as possible to maintain that structure. Observability, I need to be able to see how well the system is performing, any problems that it's having. So CloudWatch will be playing a role into this. The experience that it has to be able to support these code spaces, the dev containers, pre-built configurations, so that I can maintain this from a developer standpoint from any platforms. You see here, I have a workstation. That's my primary computer. However, my secondary computer is a Google Chrome book. So that is not a really robust computing system, but whatever I build has to be able to be edited and run off of that Chromebook. So that's where the developer experience became a non-functional requirement, is that I'm not just developing on one computer. It's going to be on multiple computers, and the difference between the computing power of those computers is significant. Okay, I want to make sure that deployments are handled appropriately and securely. I want to not have vendor lock. To a certain degree, I do have vendor lock because of AWS, but that's my profession. So that much I just have to accept. But right now in the architecture that we're going to work through, I am using make.com. This is the MVP. Once we move on to phase two, make the com will be sunset and everything is going to be working straight off of AWS, going to YouTube, going to LinkedIn, just so that I don't have multiple vendors to have to keep paying. So that's everything that we'll be going through. Thank you much for listening through. Look forward to seeing that as we progress through the series. The next video here is going to be architectural decision making and how I actually architected this and why I architected the way it did. So until then, thanks everyone. I'll see you there.